Good day, good morning, hello, wherever you are. This is me, Ben Calder from the Centre for Integral Health here with my colleague Marcus Matthews, who is transformation coach, RTT practitioner, hypnotherapist, and life coach. I think I've probably got all of the most important ones in there for you.
Yeah, I do stuff with people. That's basically what.
Yeah, that's actually a nicer way of putting it, isn't it? What do we do? We do stuff for people, and things change, stuff happens.
And things change. Yeah.
So, Marcus and I getting together today. This is World Suicide Prevention Day. And any of you who have been following Marcus's media, my media for the last few years, you'll know that for us, this is a really important topic and something that I'm getting choked up, something that we both feel really passionate about. And we're going to talk about Marcus's bit in a minute, but just as a little introduction, I'm passionate about it because for a long time through various parts of my life, I had very suicidal thoughts, and I'm really grateful that I also had enough of the right tools at the right times that I never did anything about that was terminal, which I'm really grateful for. And this is a heavy subject to a degree, but we're going to keep it light. You'll see us smiling because we're alive and we love it. And it's very difficult for a lot of people when they're having suicidal thoughts, when they're feeling suicidal, when they're wanting to give up, to be able to find a motivation and an impetus, a desire to go forward with that. And I'm so grateful that I did, because it means I still get to explore and experience the beautiful things that the world has to offer, and I get to be with fabulous people and share things with them. So, suicide, as far as I'm concerned, for the most point, and the desire for it, is because we want to find an end to what it is we're experiencing. And so often we think that is about an end to us, but it doesn't need to be that way. We can just find a way to end the thing that is intolerable to us and move beyond it and move on. But that's enough about what I think about suicide. Apart from the fact that, there's a couple of guys here who are, and that we're now. Are you older than 45 as well now, Marcus? Forgive me. Yeah, it's okay. We are both over 45 now. But
My
if you're
hearing
under,
aids.
yeah, if you're under 45, it's the single most likely cause of death for you, and that is the highest cause of death for men under 45 is suicide, and that is a sad thing to hear. 4 times as many men as women commit suicide, and there's suicides happening every few seconds around the world, unfortunately, and we want to try and bring an end to that. So, success stories. I'm still here, Marcus. You're still here.
I'm still
How
here.
did you get to the point where things were not great?
It's a long journey, and I think that's the important thing. And I think that what I would take in is that the point that you have start to have those thoughts isn't actually. It's a moment when you see the top of the iceberg, and it's the things you haven't considered through your life. So it might be that at the moment it's a poor relationship, or it's something at work, or it's something like that, something in your adult life that maybe it's been going on for a few years. But I know from the work that I do that that journey started a long time before that. So it's a drip feeding before we notice that. Um, and being a former police officer, I was the one that ran towards that. I helped a lot of people. I was British Transport Police, so I dealt with suicides. I picked the bodies up, so I gave those messages. So you would think rationally, oh, traumatic job. That's the reason why, you felt that way, PTSD, all of that sort of stuff. But it wasn't. As I reflect back on it now, I didn't know at the time, and I won't go into all of the neuroscience and the psychology that I've now uncovered as to that map, but it was very simply this. I felt disconnected. I felt like I had no purpose, and I didn't feel that was good enough, that I was different, and the life that I thought I should have wasn't there. And the worst thing of all was the guilt and shame of thinking, I'm not providing for my family, I'm not doing this, I'm not. Why is it that I'm different? Why is it that's not, this is happening to me? It logically, and that's the big word, logically does not make sense. But I need to fit in, so I'm going to bury it.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
going to show up as confident, and I'm going to show up that everything's okay. And those things are when we did the antecedents for when people had, had committed suicide. A lot of the times is we never knew. There was
Yeah.
either the never known or the people that were already in the mental health system that maybe weren't getting the support that they needed. And it's always very challenging
Yeah.
that. But I think the biggest shocks are those that go, such a lovely guy, really confident, never knew that he was having these thoughts. We don't understand. And that's when the shock, I notice with families, when people have maybe attempted or they're in real mental health crisis, so they're in the system, let's say, there is more of an acceptance that might happen. The biggest shocks are those people that they just do it.
Yeah. And of course,
That was my category. That was where I was.
yeah, and you hit it right on the nail on the head as well with the shame and the guilt. Such a big factor that somehow we think we need to apologize for something that we're not actually doing wrong, but there's this implication that we should be, could be, ought to be something that doesn't fit for us or doesn't work for us, and therefore we should feel bad about that. And that's so often a big cause behind situations where people think it's time to end their lives. But what helped you? What helped you, but what didn't help you? What was useful and what wasn't in your transition out of that stage?
I think we can all agree that there's lots of awareness that goes on about anxiety, mental health, and all that sort of stuff. We know the importance of that. And I know that organizations generally are trying to support what they think people need. So I think there's lots of good work going on by lots of people in this space. I think the biggest challenge is that when you get into that valley, I call it the valley. So you don't realize you've slid down the slope and you're in the valley, you're in the darkness. And what happens is your thinking brain shuts down and your emotional brain, your amygdala takes over, and that happens and you don't realize you're there. So the first thing is I probably didn't realize that I was on that path until it got to a point where I couldn't communicate it. And there is, without a doubt, and I don't care what anybody says, there is still a stigma.
Yeah.
There is massively a stigma. And I know that because after what happened to me in the police, and this is not denigrating the police or anything like that, I was stigmatized around that. And I wasn't stigmatized out of anybody doing anything wrong. I think I need to make that clear. There's no blame here. It's a lack of real understanding of what that feels like to go through it. And the mental health first aid course, I would recommend that to anybody who has access to that. It's one of the best courses I've done around awareness. Certainly if you're a manager, if you're a leader, do that course, because one of the things in that course is there's a box and it tells you that people can move. They can move from where they are quite quickly from being feeling suicidal to feeling well again. And the key thing is feeling connected and safe, because our mind is there to keep us alive. And it doesn't know the difference between a toxic boss and a saber-toothed tiger. So it's all about empathy and connection. And that's what I didn't feel I had. I felt like many people that I was going through a system, and the system is there to protect her. And that's our society. So nobody technically is to blame. It's a lack of understanding and awareness. And that's what we're trying to bring, is that for me, suicide wasn't, my realization afterwards was that suicide wasn't a bad thing. My suicidal thoughts weren't a bad thing. The anxiety that I was suffering wasn't a bad thing. It was actually my soul, my spirit trying to wake me up and say, this is not who you are. This is who you're supposed to be. And it's the killing of the program of who you've become, not the killing of the physical. Yeah. But unfortunately, that's something that isn't discussed or understood. And I can only say that from my experience. And I think that's really important. I'm not saying that's the same for everybody, but it is the same from my experience. And it's also the same for my clients and other people I've spoken to, that it's that, why don't I fit in? I'm not connected. This feels so unfamiliar. I just want to feel as I'm connected. And it's actually my body reacting and telling me, you are amazing. You are brilliant. And you can do this. But we don't understand the stories. We connect to what we know from our past. I don't know if that makes sense.
And it's also very difficult as well, because one of the things that's inherent in many species, many creatures, and mammals, is that when there is a diseased or sick member in the group, you isolate them. Yeah. Because what you don't want to do is get sick and get diseased. So there's also a deep unconscious part of us that's pre-language that says when something's wrong, that there's a warning there. We want to pull away a little bit. So
Yeah.
it's more than just an awareness or a consciousness. It's something that's inherently built deep into our systems.
Yeah.
And without being able to work with the recognizing of those sensations and then being able to process them in a different way based on the land that you're in, the moment that you're in, the space that you're in, to make it appropriate, you just feel like you need to step away. So
And I
it's a
think
very
it's
difficult
important
thing.
to add there, Ben, that if you've never experienced that feeling, it's very difficult to understand. It's not something you can read in a book. It isn't logical. It is deeply ingrained in all of our lineage as part. It's a survival instinct. And for
Yeah,
the tribe to go, this person isn't fitting in with the tribe, they're not connected. We need to manage that somehow so we don't get infected, even though it's unconscious, like you say. And then the person who's being ostracized is going, well, I want to be connected. So they think they're doing people a favor, and that's why I wrote in my book about this. And lots of people say is I believed that by taking my life, I was doing my family a favor. I was doing the
yeah,
world a favor. I was such a burden on everybody.
yeah.
The world would be a better place without me. What I now know is my spirit was telling me it was the absolute opposite. But that's the irony.
So what do you think is stopping you? What's changed, and now what stops you from going back to being in that place? Because lots of people go through cycles of this. So what do you feel is constructing a healthier reality for you that's helping you to stay away from a return?
I think the best way I did tell you a story about when I went back into the police and they said, well, how do you know that you're, because I broke the rules, right? It was kind of PTSD, feeling suicidal, supposed to be in therapy for like 18 months or whatever. And within 3 months, I was back on the streets with my taser. I was doing PSU. I was back on duty. Now, from a risk point of view, you've got to understand the police, you're dealing with difficult stuff. You don't want to put somebody in a position where they're going to hurt themselves again. But this was my answer when they asked. I said, because I know I'm enough. But I want to put some context on that because this is really important. If my I came out not feeling well from a suicidal point of view after I was assaulted. So you would think that trauma point happened, and then that was what caused the chemical imbalance in my brain, and I start all that sort of stuff that we kind of know is out there. Here was the root cause. When I was 6 years old, I was on holiday with my parents and my brother, and we were on the beach, and my brother threw a frisbee into the sea. Now I could swim. He did it on purpose because I'm the younger brother because he wanted to
Some
wind me up.
runs do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's like completely normal, right? So I go into the sea and this wave comes over me. And I don't mean a wave, I actually mean a physical wave. It wasn't like some emotional experience.
Uh-huh.
And I then get tumbled in this wave and I felt like I was drowning. That's why my book's called Drowning in Anxiety.
Mhm.
My brother and my dad grab hold of me, pull me out. Okay, so I say, and then start laughing. Okay, is that not normal? Bit of banter and all the rest of it.
Yeah,
My mum comes down, shouts at my dad, shouts at my mum, takes me up. Could that happen to anybody?
yeah,
Yes. It's trauma with a small t,
yeah,
not trauma with a big T. And a lot of the time, it's the traumas with the little t which have the biggest impact when there's lots of them.
yeah,
My subconscious mind did this. My dad and my brother were there to keep me alive. And I didn't feel connected when they did that.
yeah,
Therefore, I am now going to prove that I'm big enough, strong enough to look after myself at 6 years old.
yeah,
What I then did is that was a pattern of behavior that I subconsciously then indoctrinated. And when I challenged, when I pushed forward and I got knocked back, the same pattern of disconnection happened in multiple situations up to the point I was 40. So we know the mind works off repetition. So if you go through a similar emotional pattern subconsciously, so you don't really know it's happening, but it is, and you repeat that enough times, the mind and body will kick in and it will say, no, 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 this is destructive. You don't need to do this. But unfortunately, and if anybody's had anxiety, if anybody suffers, I call it the cloud. The cortisol drops down. It's like the cloud where the neocortex and the prefrontal cortex shut down. Logic is not in play here, and it's completely emotional. So these feelings that we feel are just not congruent. So we feel that we're different. We feel we're disconnected. So our soul is not connected. Our spirit is not connected. Our body's not connected. And then all of a sudden we get these thoughts of, we need to change this. We need to kill this. But the way in which I personally, and many people I've worked with, reframe it is, I need to kill the physical. And it's not. It's about killing. It's about killing the process, upgrading your computer, your software.
I'm throwing the baby out with the bathwater rather than defending the situation. Everything's got to go, and
100%.
not realizing that really all we're going to do is pass that pain on, because at that point we're going to add something to somebody else's life that is also going to, not be healthy. And having worked with clients who are unfortunately have had family members who have taken their own lives, it's a terrible, terrible place to be for those that stay behind after as well. So
and this is why it could be with anything as well. We know this, things like drug abuse, domestic violence. There are patterns. If you look, we call it antecedents in the police. And one of the reasons why you look at the antecedents is what is the pattern? What is the historical pattern? What's the medical pattern? How far's that gone back? And how can we break that cycle? And these thoughts are a natural way in which the mind and the body is saying, we need to break this cycle. It's just we read them completely wrong. And that is the challenge to make people aware of.
For sure. So what would be your most important tip for anybody that is wanting to manage their mental health and avoid or move past or transcend or release their suicidal thoughts?
Do you know what? I was listening to a lady called, I think, Susan David. She's a PhD psychologist, and she explained this in the most beautiful way to me. So if you're having those thoughts, I want you to think of them as a cloud. So they're a cloud. And if you're having an amazing day, that's the sun. And the one thing that you can just say to yourself is, I'm noticing the cloud. So if you're feeling down, you're feeling like life's on top of you, I'm noticing the cloud. Not I'm noticing I am the cloud. I'm noticing the cloud. And if you're having an amazing day, equally do the same. Oh my God, I'm having an amazing day. I notice that I'm the sun. But you're not the cloud and you're not the sun. You're the sky. And these things are going to happen. It's like the seasons. We have winter, we have spring, we have summer, we have autumn. They all have a place, and it's all part of our growth. So when you pause and breathe, God, the breath, that's the most important thing. Just pause, take a deep breath in and go, I'm noticing. And you are not the thing, you are noticing the thing. That on its own, just that little simple practice of saying, I'm noticing, and just stopping and breathing. I think it's 5 to 7 seconds. If you can do that within 5 to 7 seconds of that emotion, that breath, that thing coming into your life, you will catch the mind. The cortisol won't flood, and you can then bring yourself back online. So I would say that is the most important thing. And if you're with somebody who's in that place, just hold space for them and just get them to breathe.
Yeah, and it's amazing the differences we can make. As soon as something becomes an object, something that we notice outside of us, we are no longer the subject of it. And so its effect on us is transformed. So that's a beautiful tip. Thanks, Mark.
The is the most powerful word as well. The anxiety, not my anxiety.
Sure.
Suicidal thought.
Don't become it.
My suicidal thoughts, because then you don't become it. You then become the observer rather than embodying it. So I just wanted to give that tip as well.
Thank you. So you also wrote a book about some of this stuff, didn't you? Tell us the name of your book.
My book, I was going to call it The Power of Not Proving, because that was kind of the essence of it. But then I realized that the feeling that I'd had, those suicidal feelings, so the feeling is like the most powerful thing that drives us, right? So anxiety is a feeling. You can't go to Tesco's and buy it, right? It's something you create it in your body and then attach a story to it. So I called it Drowning in Anxiety because the thing that linked was the feeling. So when I was tumbling around in that wave, the feeling that I was going to drown was the feeling of drowning in all of these thoughts. So that was the name of the book. And it's it's really unedited. And what I did is once I got 136. I was in the Redwoods temporarily. I didn't get submitted. I wasn't submitted in there, but I had to go to the 136 suite. And I started writing a diary, and I said, "Oh, girls only write diaries." But as you sat there feeling sorry for yourself, I thought, let's write this down. I don't know where that came from. I also started to do breath work and look at yoga, and really try and look at that. And so the book really is my diary,
Yeah.
but it's not just my diary. And there's lots of swearing in there. What the fuck did this happen? So it's very raw, it's very real. But then what I also do towards the end of the book, and it's only a short book, it's 85 pages long or something like that. But what I then do is I talk about the realizations that I had, the therapy that I used, and then all the other stuff that I'd learned. So my journey started with a book. My journey started with a book. I can't afford therapy. I'm not going to go and see anybody. I'm not. My journey started, and that book, I'll give it a pitch. It's called The Ultimate Confidence by Marissa Peer. But that book changed my life.
Mm.
So my book is more of a survival guide from my experience.
Nice.
So although the book that I read, Marissa's book, was really, really useful, it didn't actually go into any detail about what that experience feels like. It gave me tools, it gave me a bit of an understanding. I related to it 100%. So the book really talks about my experience. So if you know anybody or you're interested in this, then I definitely it's online. It's only Kindle ebook. It's not in paperback yet. Hopefully I'll get it published one day. But it is something that I think that if you're not sure and you're watching this and you've had those thoughts, it might be one of the best investments that you've made, because you can feel connected and know that you're not and this is the thing, you're not the only one.
Yeah.
We all have those demons. It's just being vulnerable and courageous enough to realize that they're there to help you. So yeah.
And we're going to stick a link to that in the description for the video, so you'll be able to get hold of that nice and easy. So Marcus, thank you very much for sharing part of your story and for being here, because in World Suicide Prevention Day, you are a success because you prevented it, you're here, and we're alive. And that means that we can support the world, support each other, and continue living life. So thank you very much, everybody.
And can I just one last thing? What I would say is that when I did this and I got through the other side, and you've been through there as well, Ben, so you kind of understand this, is that I made a promise to the world to never let anybody go through what I did. So that was my purpose that I now put through the whole of my life. So anybody who's feeling they're not here for a reason, do you know what you're going through could be driving you towards your purpose. So I just wanted to leave with that.
Yeah, sometimes you're not being buried, you're being planted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you, everybody. Stay safe, stay happy, look after each other on this World Suicide Prevention Day and every other day. And we'll speak to you again soon. Lots of love. Bye bye.
Bye bye.